Meadow Crest Terraces was a suburban condominium complex in the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico, a cluster of pleasant single-story units arranged around green courtyards and winding walkways. Residents range from retirees savoring their golden years to young families getting started. Many praise the development for its manicured lawns and quiet neighbors. Much of that peaceful atmosphere existed thanks to the Homeowners Association, HOA, which handle maintenance and set basic rules. However, over the last 6 months, a new force had emerged on the HOA board. Miranda Stanson, a woman in her 50s with sharply tailored outfits, a rigid bob haircut, and a perpetual scowl. Most neighbors privately called her Karen for her confrontational style, habit of quoting HOA bylaws at the slightest provocation, and refusal to accept any viewpoint but her own. Karen's official position made her feel empowered to police everything. Mailbox decorations, slight variations in porch paint color, even the times of day when people could water their lawns. Lately, she'd found a new target, a group of senior residents who used walking poles to stay active. These seniors, mostly in their 60s and 70s, found the poles helpful for balance on the gently sloped sidewalks. They'd amble around Meadow Crest Terraces daily, enjoying fresh air, chatting softly, and staying fit. But Karen loathed the sight of the poles. She claimed they looked tacky and made the complex appear to be a retirement home. For her, image mattered above all, and she felt these seniors, strolling with aluminum poles, tarnished the upscale aesthetic that Meadow Crest Terraces strived for. Though no bylaw forbade such walking aids, Karen was determined to find a way to rid the neighborhood of them. At 7 a.m. each morning, a cluster of older residents gathered near the central courtyard, adjusting their walking poles and sharing friendly banter before beginning their gentle strolls around the looped paths. Among them were Estelle Carver, a retired librarian with a warm smile and a practical outlook. She'd started using poles after a knee surgery, finding them invaluable for support. Victor Hall, once a dedicated marathon runner in his youth, now slowed by arthritis but still relishing an active life. Dolores Dolly Santana, talkative and sociable, who discovered walking poles helped reduce strain on her hips. Gary Lansing, who had mild vertigo and found the poles boosted his confidence on slopes. They formed a small, tight-knit group that treasured these morning walks as both exercise and companionship. Along the way, they'd stop to admire flowers or greet younger neighbors heading to work. The poles made them feel secure, allowing them to maintain a healthier lifestyle than if they risked stumbling without support. At first, Karen simply glared when she saw them pass her unit, the click-click of poles echoing softly on concrete. She might roll her eyes, mutter about how they cluttered the sidewalks. But as time wore on, her annoyance grew. She complained to the HOA board that some residents are brandishing stick-like devices that could damage walkways. The board president, Ron Fletcher, dismissed her complaints, pointing out no real hazard existed and no bylaw-restricted walking aids. Karen seethed, feeling disrespected. If the board wouldn't back her, she'd handle matters personally. She began plotting a more direct sabotage, find the seniors' poles, remove them, and hope they'd give up. But she needed an opportunity, some chance to access their equipment without being caught. Most seniors kept their walking poles inside their own units, but occasionally, a few left them leaning near the communal laundry room or tucked in corners of the breezeway while taking breaks or chatting. Karen lurked, observing their routines. She noticed that after the morning walk, Estelle and Dolly often dropped their poles just inside the small utility closet near the mailboxes while picking up mail or talking to neighbors. They'd retrieve them later. This was likely their attempt to keep the hallway clear, ironically to avoid clutter. One Friday afternoon, Karen noticed Estelle's and Dolly's poles standing in that closet, overshadowed by a vacuum the cleaning staff stored there. A sly grin crossed Karen's face. She peeked around. Nobody else was in sight. Seizing the moment, she slipped into the closet, grabbed the 2 pairs of poles, and hurried outside. The bright sun made her squint, but she marched straight to the complex's large dumpster behind the maintenance shed. With a swift motion, she tossed the poles inside, burying them among garbage bags to hide them from immediate view. Her heart pounded with adrenaline. She rationalized it as removing junk. In truth, she found a grim satisfaction in imagining the seniors' confusion, frustration, and eventual abandonment of walking poles. One step closer to a more elegant neighborhood, she told herself, ignoring the cruelty of her act. That evening, Estelle visited the closet to retrieve her poles before heading home. She discovered them missing, along with Dolly's pair. Worried, she asked Dolly if she'd moved them. Dolly hadn't. They searched nearby corners, asked neighbors if they'd seen anything. No luck. The cleaning staff said they hadn't touched the poles. Bewildered, they concluded someone must have stolen them. Word spread among the seniors, provoking dismay. Why would anyone take walking poles, which had little resale value and were clearly essential for certain residents? Estelle asked the HOA if there was any camera footage around the mail area. Alas, the complex lacked security cameras in that corridor. A few neighbors wondered if it could be a random theft by passing strangers, though it seemed unlikely in a gated community. Fearing more theft, Dolly and Estelle each borrowed old canes or stayed home that weekend, uneasy about walking without their beloved poles. Meanwhile, Victor and Gary locked theirs securely inside their units, anxious they might be next. The sense of safety in Meadow Crest terraces felt shaken. Karen, silently gloating, believed she'd accomplished her mission, at least partially. A day later, she tried the same tactic again. She noticed Dolly's friend, Marge, temporarily left her poles leaning by a bench while fetching a water bottle from her unit. Karen swooped in, snatching the poles and dumping them in the dumpster, covering them with refuse. Another success, she thought. But sabotage rarely goes unnoticed forever. The seniors began to suspect a pattern. Poles didn't just vanish randomly. Someone was actively removing them. They started discussing possibilities, wondering who in the community disliked them enough to do this. Karen's name came up repeatedly, her sour looks, her prior gripes. Yet they had no proof. They needed a strategy to catch or deter the culprit. Infuriated by the missing poles, Estelle decided to speak up at the next HOA open forum. She recounted how her and Dolly's poles disappeared from a maintenance closet and how Marge's disappeared from a bench. She didn't directly accuse Karen, but implied that a resident with an agenda might be behind it. Ron Fletcher, the HOA president, was troubled. "We don't condone theft or vandalism. We'll investigate, though we don't have cameras in those areas. If any resident is found stealing property, we'll take disciplinary action." He encouraged them to store poles inside their own units for now. That same night, the seniors huddled for a conversation. Dolly, Victor, and a few others proposed collecting signatures from neighbors, demanding the HOA install basic security measures, like cameras in communal areas, and ensure that walking aides aren't harassed. They wanted an official stance that seniors had every right to use and store walking poles responsibly. They drafted a short petition. "We, the undersigned residents of Meadow Crest Terraces, request that the HOA enact measures protecting residents' walking aids, poles, canes, etc., from theft or tampering. We also ask for official support of seniors' right to walk with these aids, free from harassment or sabotage." Within days, over 100 residents signed, including younger families who sympathized. Many found Karen's rumored hostility petty. The seniors planned to present the petition at the next HOA board meeting. Meanwhile, Karen continued her crusade. She found and disposed of 2 more poles, left momentarily unguarded in a corner of the rec room. Her confidence soared. She believed the seniors might soon give up. But ironically, her blatant thefts only fueled stronger community outrage. Late one Wednesday afternoon, a maintenance worker named Hector rummaged through the large dumpster near the back of the property, searching for a misplaced toolbox. While sifting through trash bags, he stumbled upon something odd, a pair of metallic walking poles, partially hidden under coffee grounds and torn cardboard. Hector recognized them as the type used by seniors around the complex. Surprised, he dug deeper, unearthing 3 more sets, battered and sticky from garbage residue. Puzzled, Hector brought the filthy poles to the maintenance office. His supervisor, Clarissa, recognized them as belonging to the seniors who'd reported theft. Realizing this was no coincidence, Clarissa promptly contacted Ron Fletcher, the HOA president. Ron was disturbed. Clearly, someone had been deliberately dumping these poles in the trash. Word of Hector's find spread quickly among the seniors. Estelle and Dolly were relieved to learn their lost poles had been found, though they were now in dire need of cleaning or replacement. Marge's pair was so damaged by garbage that she couldn't salvage them. The seniors felt validated. There was no random robber. A saboteur from inside the community was behind it. Ron posted a notice on the community bulletin. Attention! Multiple walking poles belonging to residents have been recovered from the dumpster. This is an act of theft and vandalism. Anyone with information should contact the HOA or property manager immediately. Security measures may be strengthened. Residents are urged to keep an eye on personal items. Karen read this notice with mounting dread. She realized her disposal spree was now exposed. If the board pursued it aggressively, she could face dire consequences, fines, losing her board position, possibly even legal trouble for theft. She decided she must lie low, hoping no one had seen her in the act, and pray the seniors lacked direct evidence. If confronted, she might feign ignorance or blame random outsiders. Regardless, the seniors pressed forward, demanding the board hold an emergency meeting to address the sabotage and their protective petition. The emergency HOA meeting convened on a Saturday morning in the community recreation room, normally used for card games or small parties. Dozens of residents attended, wanting updates on the walking pole theft. The seniors arrived in force, some leaning on older canes or battered poles. Even younger folks turned out, outraged that anyone would target older neighbors. Ron Fletcher called the meeting to order. He announced that multiple stolen poles had been discovered in the dumpster, confirming sabotage. "This is unacceptable," he said, eyeing the crowd. "Whoever is responsible is undermining our sense of community." Estelle bravely recounted how her and Dolly's poles vanished from the maintenance closet, how other poles had been snatched from benches. Victor mentioned how the sabotage had sowed fear among seniors, discouraging them from their daily exercise. Then, Dolly presented the petition with over 150 signatures demanding stronger security and official support for using walking poles. Applause filled the room. Next, neighbors took the mic to express solidarity. One middle-aged father said, "My mom used a walker in her final years. I'd hate seeing her mobility aids stolen. This is appalling." Finally, Karen spoke, wearing her usual pinched expression. She feigned shock. "I'm horrified by these thefts. I can't believe anyone in our complex would do such a thing." She avoided direct condemnation of the seniors' petition, but insisted, "Maybe we should be mindful not to leave personal items around. Let's not overreact by installing cameras everywhere." Some residents frowned, suspecting Karen's insincerity. Others dismissed her remarks as typical deflection. Miriam Rouse, a board member, declared, "We owe it to our seniors to ensure they can keep active. The petition stands for that. I see no reason to deny them or hamper their walking aids." The board voted to adopt the petition's demands. They allocated funds to install a few security cameras near communal areas, updated signage clarifying residents' right to store walking poles responsibly, and declared that any harassment or theft of mobility devices would be met with swift penalties. The seniors cheered. Karen remained silent, her face stony. She realized her scheme had backfired. Not only had the stolen poles been found, but the seniors had gained official HOA endorsement. She stewed with anger. If she couldn't rely on sabotage, how else could she push these walking poles out of the neighborhood? While the new security measures helped, many seniors worried about their soiled, damaged poles. Some pairs were salvageable after thorough cleaning, but others were ruined. Replacing them could be expensive. Dolly and Marge, especially, fretted about the cost of new high-quality poles. Meanwhile, a friend of Victor's who worked at a local hiking supply store, Southwest Trails and Gear, heard about the sabotage. Outraged that seniors' mobility tools had been trashed, she shared the story with her manager. The manager, recognizing a potential goodwill opportunity and genuinely moved, contacted the LSBA, a small Lakewood Seniors Pole Association that formed spontaneously after the thefts, to propose a donation program. Southwest Trails and Gear wanted to sponsor brand new walking poles for all affected seniors in Meadow Crest Terraces, and possibly for any resident who needed them. The manager explained, "We believe in promoting safe, active lifestyles. If your condo community is struggling with sabotage, we'll step in, providing top-quality adjustable walking poles at no cost to whomever wants them. We'll also host a free safety workshop on using poles effectively." Estelle, Dolly, and the others were stunned by the generosity. They organized a meeting with the store's manager, hammered out details. The store would bring a variety of pole models on a designated Saturday. Residents could be fitted, and each household could get a set if needed, especially older or mobility-challenged neighbors. Southwest Trails and Gear would provide staff to demonstrate correct usage, posture, and maintenance tips. It was a dream come true. Word spread throughout Meadow Crest Terraces. Even younger residents expressed interest in trying poles for local hikes. The seniors were overjoyed. Not only would they replace lost or damaged poles, but more neighbors might adopt them. The positivity soared. Meanwhile, Karen fumed at the news, seeing her dreaded walking poles multiply. Her sabotage had ironically drawn attention, winning the seniors brand new gear. A warm, sunny Saturday dawned as trucks from Southwest Trails and Gear rolled into the Meadow Crest Terraces parking lot. Volunteers set up tables under pop-up canopies. Rows of sleek, adjustable walking poles gleamed in the morning light. The store's staff wore bright shirts reading, "Embrace the Path," greeting residents with friendly smiles. Seniors arrived first, excited to replace battered or stolen poles. Each was measured for correct pole length, learning how to adjust wrist straps. Dolly nearly wept, thanking the manager for restoring our sense of security. Estelle marveled at the new graphite-reinforced poles, lightweight, sturdy, and sporting comfortable grips. As the giveaway continued, younger neighbors wandered in, curious about the fuss. The staff explained how walking poles could reduce joint strain, improve posture, and even benefit brisk walks or mild hikes. Soon, lines formed, with many claiming free sets. It turned into a neighborhood event. Families chatting, staff demonstrating techniques, small children playing with practice poles. The staff taught a mini class on gait and stability, showing how to plant poles for best support. By noon, over 40 sets had been distributed to seniors, plus another 40 or so to other residents. The store manager beamed at the outpouring of gratitude, certain the positive PR would help their brand too. For the seniors, it felt like a festival. Some even joked that Karen's sabotage had turned them into local celebrities, now sporting fresh, matching gear. A sense of solidarity filled Meadow Crest Terraces. Karen, skulking behind closed blinds, observed the event from her unit with mounting dismay. Poles were everywhere, in every color. People who'd never used them before seemed enthralled. Her attempt to minimize their presence had failed catastrophically. She briefly considered confronting the store staff or denouncing the giveaway, but the entire neighborhood seemed united in celebration. Resigned, she stayed indoors, cursing the unstoppable wave of walking poles. In the weeks after the giveaway, the walking poles became a fixture at Meadow Crest Terraces. Not just the seniors. Residents of all ages started using them for morning or evening strolls. The courtyard paths, once mostly quiet, now bustled with small groups comparing grips, discussing technique. The newly installed security cameras made them feel safer, and the official HOA stance protected them from harassment. Estelle led a weekly pole walkers club, inviting anyone wanting to practice together. Dolly and Marge tried more adventurous routes around the perimeter, sometimes venturing onto a nearby nature trail. Even Victor, who used to lament his arthritis, discovered he could manage longer distances with high-quality poles. Their once tiny group of 4 seniors tripled in size. Laughter and cheerful conversation accompanied the click-click of poles on pavement. Karen found it maddening. She'd hoped to remove a handful of seniors' poles. Now half the complex was brandishing them. She seethed each time a neighbor strolled by her window. On occasion, someone greeted her, brandishing their new pole with a friendly wave, ignorant of her role in the earlier theft. She'd fake a stiff smile and turn away. She realized her sabotage had ironically popularized the exact thing she despised. Meanwhile, the seniors thrived. Their confidence soared. Residents who had once stayed indoors discovered the joy of communal walks. Health benefits and neighborly bonds blossomed. The overshadowing fear from the theft saga faded, replaced by empowerment and inclusivity. If Karen tried anything else, the community was ready to stand firm. Surprisingly, as more neighbors used poles, some recognized that Karen seemed increasingly isolated. A new board member, Joyce Allen, approached her, urging her to reconsider her stance. "Why not join one of the pole walking sessions?" she suggested, half joking. "You might enjoy the exercise." Karen scoffed, claiming she didn't need such crutches. But behind closed doors, Karen wrestled with guilt, denial, and embarrassment. She had never intended for the entire condo to unify against her. She'd only wanted to preserve a certain look, less like a retirement community, more like an upscale development. Now she saw her attempts at spur an opposite outcome. The biggest irony was that any further sabotage would be near impossible with cameras and heightened vigilance. She felt trapped. One afternoon, Karen saw an older neighbor, Harriet, struggling with groceries. Harriet used a walker, and her arms were full. For a moment, Karen hesitated, then stepped forward to help. Harriet thanked her, mentioning how helpful her new walking poles had been. Karen forced a polite nod. She realized Harriet's sincere gratitude matched that of so many others for the new gear. An unwelcome pang of conscience stirred. Perhaps these walking poles truly improved lives. Karen began adopting a lower profile at board meetings, no longer championing petty restrictions. She occasionally found herself defending small changes that might once have enraged her. Neighbors noticed her subdued demeanor. Some speculated she'd faced enough backlash to learn a lesson. As autumn approached, Southwest Trails and Gear proposed a concluding celebration, a community hike day from Meadow Crest terraces at a nearby scenic trail. They'd lead a beginner-friendly group hike, show advanced pole techniques, and provide snacks. Many seniors jumped at the chance to venture beyond the condo paths, now that they had confidence with their new poles. The HOA board, seeing it as a morale booster, approved. On a crisp Saturday morning, about 60 residents caravanned to the trailhead. The store staff led them through gentle inclines, pointing out desert flora. Dolly beamed at the panoramic views she never thought she'd see, given her hip problems. Victor felt a surge of nostalgia, recalling the runner he once was. Younger families tag along, carrying children or letting them skip around with smaller kids' poles. Laughter and the tap-tap of poles on dirt accompanied the group. Remarkably, Karen attended, though she came unaccompanied and carried no poles. She hovered at the back, arms folded, uncertain. Mid-hike, she nearly slipped on loose gravel, prompting Harriet and Estelle to steady her. They gently teased. "A set of poles might help, dear." Karen flushed, but mumbled a thank you. She realized how they'd graciously aided her, despite her earlier sabotage. At the summit, the group paused for water. The store manager praised Meadow Crest terraces for embracing an active lifestyle. Photos were taken, smiling seniors brandishing poles, parents with toddlers, Karen lurking on the edge. She felt a strange mix of envy and regret, seeing how happy they all were. After the hike, the group returned to the condos, still buzzing with excitement. Karen, exhausted but oddly moved by the experience, found her neighbor Harriet waiting on a bench. Harriet spoke kindly. "We appreciate you showing up, Karen. It meant a lot to see you. You know, you can join the group anytime, with or without poles." Karen lowered her gaze. "I might have been wrong about the poles. They seem to help a lot of people." She paused, swallowing pride. I'm sorry for how I acted." It wasn't a full confession of her theft, but Harriet sensed the contrition. Harriet patted Karen's shoulder. "We all make mistakes. You're welcome among us, truly." Then Harriet chuckled. "You ever want a pair of your own? The store might still sponsor you. They gave me spares for my sister." Karen managed a faint smile, though her eyes shimmered. "Maybe someday," she said quietly. She walked away, head filled with conflicting emotions, acknowledging at last that her sabotage was misguided. She might never publicly admit to dumping the poles, but she'd stepped onto a path of quiet repentance. By late fall, the crisp breeze rustled the trees lining Meadow Crest terraces. The community had evolved into a lively, health-conscious haven, with daily or weekly walking sessions that bridged generations. The newly installed cameras deterred any potential mischief. The seniors, once timid about their poles, wore them proudly as symbols of resilience and independence. At the final board meeting of the year, Ron Fletcher complimented the entire community for embracing positivity. We overcame challenges, from stolen poles to a wave of new walking culture. This sense of unity is what Meadow Crest Terraces stands for. Applause echoed. Even Karen, sitting at the board table, offered a small clap, no longer the adversarial force she'd been. Dolly beamed, whispering to Estelle how she never imagined they'd become local celebrities for their morning walks. Estelle nodded, remembering how devastated she felt when the sabotage first happened. Now they had better gear, official HOA support, and a stronger sense of belonging. Meanwhile, the hiking supply store, thrilled with the positive press, maintained relationships with the residents, occasionally offering free or discounted gear. Some seniors even tried mild weekend hikes outside the complex. Freed from fear, they discovered new horizons, physically and socially. Younger neighbors, too, found themselves forming stronger bonds with older residents, bridging the generational gap. Karen, though never openly confessing her wrongdoing, remained subdued but no longer antagonistic. She occasionally peered out her window at the daily pole walkers, no longer seething. Maybe she'd never be a champion of walking poles, but she'd stopped interfering, acknowledging the community's stance. If anything, she found a grudging respect for the seniors' determination. Thus, the story ended on a hopeful note. What began as a mean-spirited campaign to remove a handful of tacky walking poles blossomed into an entire culture of active living. A single sabotage turned into a triumphant moment, spurring the donation of poles for everyone and forging a stronger community. In Meadow Crest Terraces, each click-click on the sidewalks told a tale of resilience over pettiness, reminding everyone that empathy and unity can flourish even in the face of cruelty.